Hiya. This is the closing report for the project Qualitative Audit Pilot. There's the idea scale link to it. The project was a new way for WADA and potentially other organisations to monitor their projects and track what they're learning from them. So let's start off with the proposal basics. The name of the proposal was Wada Qualitative Audit Pilot. There's the idea scale link to it. And there's the project ID number. The core project team was me, Vanessa Cardoui from QA Dell, and Mercy A from WADA. The budget was $26,000, and it was in the challenge Improve and Grow Auditability from Fund 8. The dates the project ran were May 2022 to October 2023. By the way, before we start, what gets called audit in Catalyst often isn't audit at all. Audit is more of an external thing, but when a project itself is collecting data to evidence how it's going, that's really monitoring and evaluation, otherwise known as M&E. And that's the term we've used throughout this report, even though the project itself mentions the word audit. So first of all, the challenge KPIs and how we address them. The core of the auditability challenge in Fund 8 was how to make the auditing process of funded proposals efficient, distributed, and transparent. And we addressed that by focusing on how to collect and make sense of qualitative data specifically. We were exploring the extra transparency that qualitative information can give about how a project is really going. Now our project aims and how we address them. Our main aim was to develop a new audit and documentation methodology which incorporates vital qualitative information and pilot it with key WADA-funded proposals. So we addressed this aim in 3 steps. First, we collected input from 4 focus groups drawn from WADA project workers. Then we went away and developed a methodology using the input from those focus groups. And then we came back and trained WADA project managers in the methodology and invited them to test it. So let's have a look at the first one, the input we collected from the focus groups. First of all, they said a lot about the importance of establishing baselines and at looking at what has actually changed as a result of the project. All the focus groups felt that that was quite an important element of evaluating what a project has achieved. Then there was the standardization dilemma. People want flexibility and they want an approach that takes account of what is distinctive about a project, but they also want a degree of standardization so that projects can be compared. We realised that getting this balance right would be key to our project's success. Another thing that came from out of the focus groups is the issue of tooling, the unsustainability of expensive paid-for tools, and the value of using tools that managers are already familiar with. There was also the question of using M&E, monitoring and evaluation, to extract learning for WADA as an organisation as a whole, and especially how we can organise the data that we collect when we monitor so that WADA can compare across their different projects. There was also the need to measure real-world impact and value, rather than just ticking off internally defined milestones. And there was a need to look at how far it's possible to capture the longer term impact that a project is having, because a lot of people in the focus groups from WADA were really interested in long-term impact. Then our next step, the actual methodology that we devised. We drew on theory of change, which is a really interesting approach to evaluation. And if you don't know about it, there's a link there that you can have a look at to address the issues of impact, change, and value that were raised in the focus groups. And we also drew on nano publications. Again, there's a link there to have a look in a bit more detail at that. We use that to address the idea of making M&E material more discoverable and enabling organisational learning. So our new methodology has 5 steps to it. First of all, you identify what your project hopes to change and or what you hope to learn from it. Because we were working with existing funded projects, we did this retrospectively, but in future, we'd envisage it being a core part of the initial project planning. Next, you create a set of tags for the project, including some that are based on its change aims or its organisational learning aims. Then you undertake your actual monitoring at 3 key measuring points. There's a baseline evaluation at the start, a midterm evaluation, or for longer projects, there may be more than one midterm, and a final evaluation at the end. Then you tag all your evaluation material as you collect it using the tags that you created for your project. And then each time you conduct an evaluation, you note 2 or 3 small, simple insights that you feel you can derive from the data that you've collected, and you log them together with a link to where you observed them. And that should be quite precise. It could be to a bookmark in a document or a specific cell or column in a spreadsheet, something like that, a particular photograph, that kind of level of detail. We called these insight gems, and they're pretty much inspired by the nano publication standard. They're short, clear insights plus provenance. So this creates a more evidence-based approach to evaluation. And then the last phase of the project, which was the training and testing of the actual methodology. We created some training resources to show WADA project managers how to use the new methodology, and we delivered a training session to core managers. Then they went away and tested the method in practice with their projects and reported back. We were happy to find that the process worked really well, although managers did suggest some refinements. First of all, the template that we devised for creating tags was apparently really useful, so managers were suggesting that perhaps other elements of the process could be templated too. And then they also found that the distinction between quantitative and qualitative evaluation doesn't always need to be completely rigid. Managers found they ended up bringing quantitative elements into their qualitative measures and vice versa. For example, they were doing things like asking how many people, which is obviously a quantitative measure, felt that the experience of being involved in the project was positive, which is essentially a qualitative measure. Now let's have a look at the key achievements of the project. The things we're proud of include, first of all, the actual methodology itself. It works well, it's low cost, it reveals some really interesting things about projects which are not being captured in other ways in Catalyst, and it succeeds in supporting not only monitoring and evaluation for individual projects, but also overall planning and organisational development for an organisation. We also believe that it will be adaptable to other organisations outside of WADA and to many different types of projects, although testing this in detail was obviously out of scope of this project. We're also quite proud of the training materials we created, which we think others will be able to use and adapt to their individual situations. We're also proud of collaborating across key WADA projects. The project engaged several core WADA projects, both Catalyst and non-Catalyst, and gave WADA some really interesting organisation-wide insights. And finally, we're proud of the archiving element of the project. We were pleased to work out that our process does seem to be workable as a way to archive insights from projects in a searchable way, which is something that WADA really needed. One benefit of our decision to use G Suite was that in order to make it work, we had to develop a WADA-wide file naming protocol, which we think should be useful long-term in storing material and making it discoverable. Now let's have a look at some of the key learnings from the project. One thing we learnt was about tooling. Although we did budget for tools, a drop in the price of Ada early on in the project meant that more expensive tools, at least, were no longer possible. And anyway, our focus groups had questioned the sustainability of expensive tools. You know, you buy them, and then if you can't afford to renew them, you're stuck. So we worked out a way to use G Suite, which is the tool set that was most familiar to WADA project managers already, to achieve the tagging and data organization that we wanted. We jokingly called this process tool bricolage, using tools off-label in creative ways that they were perhaps never intended to be used, in order to support accessibility and financial sustainability. Although there were some limitations as a result of this approach, and it did shape our work to an extent, we were pleased to find that with a bit of inventiveness, we could make simple tools do what we wanted. Another thing that we learnt is about the importance of linking your project monitoring to your aims and your impact, and to the qualitative thinking you had when you first conceived of the project. All too often, this initial qualitative thinking, you could call it the why behind the project, ends up disappearing under a slew of not very relevant how much and how many metrics. And projects don't have a way to record and evidence the actual changes that they're making or the point of what they're doing. This is where we see our methodology being helpful, since it embeds what you actually want to change and what impact you want to have into your monitoring and evaluation, so that you can actually track it. And the third thing that we learnt is that qualitative monitoring and evaluation supports meaningful pivoting. We found that qualitative evaluation of a project, especially around what it aims to change or what it aims to learn, can help with recognising the need for a pivot, and with ensuring that the pivot keeps the original intention of the work. When we were trialling our method with WADA projects, it raised really interesting issues about how and when to put into action the insights that you've gained from monitoring and evaluation, and what the signs are that an actual pivot might be needed. Particularly, we think that the process of identifying insight gems, those little short, clear insights together with provenance, might help with adjusting how things are going. And let's wrap the report up by looking at the next steps for the project. We'll finish the project off by sharing our method with other organisations in Catalyst. Admittedly, this won't be as easy as it once would have been, because the Catalyst community has shrunk a little bit, and some of the groups that we especially wanted to share with are not very active any longer. But we will present and discuss what we've done in Catalyst Africa Town Hall, and also via one of WADA's own regular events. And we'll also make our material available to everyone, since we think it's useful to many different kinds of projects. And on that note, here are some things that we made in the project that you can use. First of all, our how-to slides, which are what we used when we trained WADA managers in how to use the methodology. Just takes you through it step by step and explains how it works. There's also the template and worksheet that we used as part of that session. And finally, the file naming structure that we developed, which we think other organisations could probably adapt and use the basic principles of if they want to organise their material a little better. So that's all from us, and thanks very much for watching.